Hello and good afternoon and welcome to today's session. I can see there are lots of people already trying to get in, so I'm going to give it a few more seconds just whilst everyone gets settled and comfortable, ready for the start of the session. Just while I do that, I think, or while we do that, I'd urge you to have a pen and paper ready. I will be encouraging you to come forward with ideas or share feedback and questions during the session. So, and the chat box will be open on the right-hand side to do so. But like I say, I'm going to just switch off the camera for a moment and just give it a few more seconds for those that are just working through the technology to get loaded in, and then we'll kickstart the session. But lovely to see so many of you in today's session. This is one of our most widely anticipated webinars, so we're super excited to be with you this morning. Okay, we'll just give it a couple more seconds. I can see lots of people are diving in as we speak. I also want to make sure that we can all hear. Yes, we can. I've had confirmation of that come through from the team as well. That's great. Perfect. Okay, I think we're just over a minute over, so we will get started. And like I say, thank you everybody for attending today's session. I've prepared something that hopefully will be both valuable, but also a bit of fun as well, and educational. In terms of the presentation, before I dive in, I'd like to just first introduce myself. My name is Steve Middleton. I am the UK Growth Director here at Kodiak Hub. And like I said before, it's an absolute pleasure to be delivering today's session. For those of you that don't know, at Kodiak Hub, we work with successful leaders, procurement leaders, strategic leaders all over the world. And we help them turn supplier information into intelligence. More on that as we get into today's session. But my goal today is to connect each and every one of you to the true transformational power and impact of having a dedicated SRM platform in the heart of your procurement ecosystem. But before we dive in, I want to just introduce you to the chat box on the right-hand side. You'll see my colleague, Richard Tuchler, has already put a message in there. Please use that chat box to share any feedback, any comments, any questions you'd like us to address. We will have a Q&A session at the very end of this presentation, and Richard will pick out the questions that he feels are going to be of value to the group, but also during the presentation, also answer questions for you live throughout the session. So without further ado, let's dive in. And I want to start today's session with a very short video. And I will warn you, this is just a few seconds long, but I think it perfectly demonstrates the power of performance and efficiency, what it should both look and feel like. Okay, I did warn you, it's a very short video. And what we've just witnessed there is the F1 team in 2019, this is the Red Bull team in 2019, changing 4 tyres in less than 1.82 seconds. And at the time, this represented a world record for changing tyres. Now, I also understand that whilst this record has now been broken, it's even quicker than that, I think we can all agree it was hugely impressive. However, I can tell you that Formula One teams haven't always been so efficient. By direct contrast, I'd now like to look at a clip from the 1950s, and bear with it, because this is going to be a little bit longer.
Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
Okay, I'm not going to make you sit through the entire video. You'll have to trust me when I say that goes on for a full minute and 7 seconds. And in that time, rather than changing 4 tires. The guy here in the top right-hand corner, using his trusty rubber mallet, he was able to just change 2 tires within that time. So you can see it's a very different environment. We're not surrounded by people here. We've got individuals just standing around and watching. It's not that perfect orchestration of efficiency. So what is the difference? Let's look at the difference between the 1950s and to today. What's the difference between a 1 minute and 7 second pit stop where you're changing just 2 tires and that of a 1.82 second pit stop from the Red Bull team? And I think it's 2 things. First of all, technology, and secondly, orchestration. There are new, more powerful tools that enhance the performance. Can you imagine the Red Bull team stood around that car waving around rubber mallets? I don't think so. But at the same time, it's about orchestration. Look at how that team came together. Everybody collectively striving to achieve the same goal and understanding the importance of their role in doing so. Everybody understanding not just their role, but the sequence in which they needed to perform that role. It was a perfect orchestration. And in the very same way, because it's not just Formula One that's going through that transformation, so is procurement. Procurement is changing drastically. However, it's also interesting to understand that most are still acting like we're in the 1950s, particularly when it comes to adopting new technology, particularly when it comes to driving efficiency through orchestration. And let's all agree that this is now super important because there are new challenges reshaping procurement. Procurement is no longer just about that act of cost reduction and risk management. There are new responsibilities, new challenges that are put upon us, mainly being these 3 key areas that I've highlighted. Greater levels of transparency and traceability are now required. New ESG regulations, new market demands, but also supply chain resilience. We can all agree that this last 5 or 6 years have been incredibly challenging, and it's going to continue. But also this need to innovate and drive impact. We are now responsible for more sustainable trade. Let's also not forget the tsunami of legislations that we need to manage. The fact that we're in another very disruptive year. I mean, did you know that in 2024, half of humanity live in a country that are going to have a national election? Think of the impact that that's going to have on border trades, etc. And finally, this need, like I say, to innovate and drive change. I mean, here are just 2 examples. We've got Apple here have launched their first carbon neutral watch. And you've got BMW that unveiled recently their fully circular concept car, a concept car that they are fully intending to put into circulation by 2040. So for companies like us and like you that want to remain competitive and future-proof themselves, we are also responsible for leading sustainable sourcing, because I can tell you this is just the beginning. So for those of you that are on this call that think this is super important, then we need to move from being reactive to being proactive. That's the only way that we're going to be able to manage these changes and stay on top of our roles. So we need to move away from that operational risk management bottom line stuff so we can stay laser focused on the top line strategic stakeholder conversations we need to have with our suppliers. And the great thing about new technology is new technology can automate a lot of the really important but boring stuff that we're doing in our daily operational lives, but also prompt us to have the right conversations with the right suppliers at the right time. Drive those conversations with data, drive those negotiations with data, streamlining processes. So for those of you that are really super keen to stay focused on those top line strategic stakeholder conversations and remove a lot of the operational and tactical stuff that we have to do today, well, then maybe, just maybe, SRM is a solution that might be of interest to you. So what is SRM? In fact, I was asked this very question only a couple of weeks ago whilst attending an event. So to help demonstrate or explain or expand on what the potential of SRM is, I'd like to introduce you to the SRM pyramid. But in fact, before I go into this, and I might be biased by saying this, I genuinely believe that SRM is critical to every organization, big or small. Yet sadly, even those that have it within their businesses, rarely is it utilized to its full potential. So my goal today, for those of you that have SRM within your organization, my goal is to connect you to the full potential of SRM in your business. But for those of you that don't yet have SRM within your organization or aren't even sure of what it can deliver or how it can help you, my goal is to open up your eyes to a whole new world. Because I have to tell you, in this current climate, this is super exciting. So if I could bring your eyes back to the SRM pyramid in front of you, you'll see that I've broken this down into three very distinct areas. You've got operational, tactical SRM, and then strategic. Strategic, by the way, is when it gets really exciting. This is when we start to really drive performance and have an impact, not just within our organization or the team, but again, globally across the organization and beyond. But I'm going to start with looking at the operational and tactical side of SRM, because that's where most of us spend most of our time. And I want to help to expand on how SRM can make you become super effective and efficient within these areas. And to kickstart this session, I want to use a quote from our incredible founder and CEO, Marlene Schmidt. Marlene says, procurement is drowning in information, but yet is still starved of knowledge. Now just think about that for a moment. Think about your existing supply chain. Think about all the information that we're able to pull through from, I don't know, your ERP solution or from third-party technologies or data houses. Think about the information we can draw in, and we have to draw in, and we're required to draw in from suppliers. Think about that feedback we get from internal stakeholders who are helping us understand what their experience is of working with that supplier. And yet, how much do we actually know? How much do we actually understand about our suppliers? How much of that data is driving the efficiency or the effectiveness or the operational changes we need to make to drive that supplier forwards? Does this look familiar? I know it is. And in fact, we're going to do a poll in a moment. Many are still managing suppliers in Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, PDFs. In fact, some are using ERP solutions. ERP solutions are brilliant. They're fantastic, but they're not built for managing the relationships of your suppliers. Or you might be lucky and have some sort of homegrown solution. But the reality is we're not going to make our way up that SRM pyramid using these legacy solutions. We need to adopt new technologies. I'm going to pause here for a second and just launch a quick poll, because I'll be super interested of those of you, and like I said, we've got lots of you online today. I'd love to understand from your perspective what you're using today within your organization. So I'm just going to go ahead and share this poll. Bear with me one second. Here we go. I'm going to share that now. So if I can just ask each of you just to look on the right-hand side of your screen next to the chat box, what you have in place today, whether it's a homegrown solution, whether it's a legacy software such as SAP or Ariba or Coupa, whether you yourself have a dedicated SRM platform, or in fact, are you using Excel, Word, email to manage your suppliers? That was quick. We've got just over 50% of you that have now answered. So I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds while everybody else pops in a response. Okay. Great. Just going to ask one or two of you more. Perfect. Okay. Really interesting. We will share these results after the webinar, but I can tell you on my screen, it says that 74% of you, 73% of you are still using Excel. And that's really interesting because when we ran this last year, it was 76%. So things are improving. So our messages are clearly cutting through, which is super nice to know. But like I said before, if we're never going to make our way up that SRM pyramid using these legacy solutions. So what is the difference then between Excel hell and SRM excellence? Well, first of all, and it's two things. First of all, an SRM platform enables you to create what we call that single source of truth. This is where we're able to adopt all the data, all the information you have on your suppliers from various sources and put it into one place. But more importantly than that, a smart SRM, and that's the difference. There's SRM and then there's smart SRM. A smart SRM turns that information into actionable insights, into knowledge, into understanding. Going back to Marlin's quote, we are drowning in information, yet starved of knowledge. We turn that information into intelligence, knowledge, understanding, actionable insights that should drive the process. And by the way, when I say all information, I mean all information. Now, I can't talk for every SRM platform that's out there, and there's lots of them, okay? But if you are within Kodiak Hub, this is what you can expect in terms of orchestration. You can expect to be, plugging in to your existing tech stack. So ERP solutions, your procurement solutions. We would expect to be pushing and pulling data back within those systems. Maybe enterprise data lakes, absolutely capturing and sharing information back and forth with your suppliers, all tracked and traced within the solution. Capturing that really important, that valuable internal stakeholder feedback, real-time stakeholder feedback, again, back and forth within the solution. That third-party curated data, we're not here to dictate to you where you get your data from. Whatever data is super important to you, whether it's industry specific or product or whatever it might be, plug it in, capture them, but turn that data into intelligence. But also we operate a bring your own license, which means that if you're using DocuSign today to manage all your contract signing, then absolutely that should be plugged in. If you're using EcoVadis today or another for capturing your your legacy information, we can utilize that. Carbon capturing, credit ratings, whatever it might be. Again, what I'm saying to you here is this is not about having a change management program. This is about taking what exists today and making it more efficient, more effective for your organization. That's why we talk about orchestration. That's what a smart SRM is able to do. It's a push and pull, pulling that data through. And imagine a world, okay? Imagine a world where you've just had a supplier complete a self-registration, and immediately you now have the information that's been pulled through from that self-registration. You've now got the country macro risk rating. So we now understand the environment in which that supplier is exposed to and any particular requirements that are required. All the information captured from your ERP solution, if it exists already, or they've populated as part of that registration, captured automatically within the SRM. Any financial ratings, media monitoring, sanctions, PEP screening, immediately captured in without you having to do anything at all. So you've already started to capture an understanding of who the supplier is. But maybe you then take that a step further and you start to reach out to that supplier. It's really important that we understand their sustainability ratings. We want to make sure that every one of your suppliers meets your acceptance criteria. And that criteria might change depending on category or industry or country or location or whatever it might be. It's also important to understand the performance ratings of your supplier. But also collectively, these three dials will drive an overall global rating. This is all being captured for you and automatically generated within the solution. Furthermore, every assessment, every audit, every evaluation you've ever carried out with that supplier is automatically pinned within the solution, which you can open up at a click of a button. Every action, every piece of collaboration, every conversation, every negotiation you've had with that supplier, automatically saved, tracked, and traced within the scorecard. Every contract, every document, again, automatically pinned to that specific supplier scorecard, including things like expiry dates, which can have notifications driven to it to prompt when they require updating. You can have your DocuSign, so again, and you can manage the process of that signing, all within the solution, and much, much more. Like I say, I can't talk for all SRMs, but if you have a smart SRM, the point is here, we capture all that operational and tactical stuff is being managed for you, which frees up your time to make sure you can actually work on more of the strategic alignment with your suppliers. So what are the benefits of smart SRM? Well, again, I'm going to cover these off very quickly. Single source of truth, we've just showcased that. The stats tell us that you are 70% faster when it comes to onboarding, ongoing qualification, validation of your suppliers. 50% cost and time savings by automating just the manual tasks. Improved efficiency and internal collaboration. I'm going to go on to collaboration in a moment. Stronger basis for supplier segmentation, classifications, how you filter, sort, segment your suppliers. Touch of a button. Simplify compliance verification. Again, making sure that from a compliance perspective, that all the suppliers involved in certain projects have got the right documentation. If not, how to capture that very simply. Again, 360-degree risk assessments, improved data accuracy and completeness. 86% of all suppliers on our platform that have been asked to provide information, they complete that assessment in full within 2 weeks, without that typical having to press and follow up and stress. And the most important one, visualization of insights for faster, smarter sourcing decisions. So again, a smart SRM will help you to drive the decisions you need to make related to your suppliers. So here we are, we're back in the SRM pyramid. What I've touched on there very quickly is the operational and tactical side of SRM, how SRM can help you to drive what we do today in terms of that operational work that we have to carry out, whether it's supplier information management, whether it's supplier discovery and onboarding, whether it's turning that data into intelligence so we know more about our suppliers, and of course, having a robust risk compliance and qualification process in place. It's all managed within your SRM. Now, I want to move into strategic, because this is where it gets super exciting. This is where you turn from being a real asset within the organization. And we often talk about procurement should have a place at the table. This is where you create your own seat at your own table that people want to be part of, because you're driving efficiencies and you're driving the impact within your organization. So let's start with supplier performance. And before I go into how you measure performance, I want to start with this quotation from Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I want to bring you back to the Formula One clips that I shared at the very beginning of this presentation. Do you think they moved from that 1 minute and 7 second pit stop to a 1.82 second pit stop by accident? Or do you think they measured every element of that pit stop to get to where they are today and actually beyond? Like I said before, that record of 1.82 seconds has now been broken. So let's all agree that measuring performance is super important. And yet I have to tell you, 9 times out of 10, when I sit with a prospective client and ask about how they're measuring performance, most don't do it at all. They simply don't have the time. Well, once you have a smart SRM in place, it creates time. So how do you measure performance? Well, these are 6 very simple steps. Number 1, we need to agree that we need to use both hard and soft data. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we need to be capturing the right information directly from, again, via API from your ERP solution and tech solutions. So we capture that data of that particular supplier. But we want to combine that as well with internal stakeholder feedback and supplier feedback. It's that triangular effect that will drive that overall performance dial. And that dial should be impacted based upon your criteria, which takes me to step 2. Align on the performance KPIs in line with the organization. So what do I mean by that? Well, again, it's crazy that you have your own KPIs that have nothing to do with the strategy or success strategy of the organization. Let's make sure that we're fully aligned. And that might mean, by the way, depending on the type of supplier, the category of supplier, the location of that supplier, that the rules might change. Those KPIs might change. Again, a smart SRM will cope with that. Once you're aligned, you need to have the ability to drill down into that supplier performance by area. You can see here, we're looking at quality, we're looking at delivery and supply chain, we're looking at commercial, innovation, sustainability, and collaboration. They're the 6 areas that are deemed important in this example. In fact, there's a huge amount that can actually fall into that. So sat behind this will be various data points. But then this becomes the magic, because smart SRM enables you not just to capture the data and score it, but also weight the value of that data. You know, for example, we've got here, it's clear that commercial performance and delivery score lowest, but actually it's even more clear now because commercial performance, that's 30% of the weighting that's in this example. So that should be highlighted absolutely as an area that we need to focus on with that particular supplier. And again, with any of this, you can build in rules that means it will prompt you. So you don't have to worry about this information or collaborating in the background. Once, again, a supplier goes above or below a certain line as decided by you, the system should prompt you. Into step 5, it's not just quantifiable data, it's quantitative data as well. It's qualitative and qualitative data. I think I've said that wrong, but you get what I mean. It's open responses and it's numbers. So you need to have the ability to get both and to be able to flip through both. Because again, some of that soft data you're getting back, that experience data you're getting back, you need words. And again, you'll be able to measure that. And then finally, you want to have the ability to measure this consistently and continuously over time, because you will have suppliers today. I promise you, you will have suppliers today where your perception is they're fantastic. And that's based on their performance when they first started working with you 2 years ago. But because your perception tells you that they're a great supplier, you know, your mind, so your eyes only see and your ears only hear what your mind is searching for. Your mind is telling you that that's a great supplier. However, there might be certain areas where they're starting to slip up. So again, now we're starting to measure each individual component, which goes towards how they're performing as a supplier. The system will prompt you, and you'll be able to see graphs like this where you can see how their performance has changed over time. So there you have it, supply performance, but it should not be just on its own. This should form part of that 360-degree view of your supplier. Here's 3 examples. You've got your safe source, which is your country-related risks, so the environment they're exposed to. You've got your sustainable practices to make sure that they meet your acceptance criteria in terms of their practices. And in the middle of that, you've got performance. And that performance is broken down to each individual component that relates to their relationship with you. Collectively, that will drive towards that overall global number that you have on that supplier. So I know I've covered that off very quickly. And I appreciate you'll have questions related to that. So please, if you'd like to schedule a call, a one-to-one conversation with me or any of the team, please know that you can do that via a particular link, which I'm going to put on your screens now. So again, you can actually book that one-on-one conversation using that link, pick a time that's most relevant for you. We will naturally be following up from this email, from this presentation as well, where you'll have the opportunity to book a call in. My team will be calling you, etc. Okay, so collaboration. So we're still in that strategic space. Okay, so we've now understood how our suppliers were performing, and because the way that data is so rich, that data enables us to have real meaningful data-driven conversation with our suppliers. But please remember, suppliers are friends, not food. Super important. You know, we want to become their best customer as well as we want them to become our best supplier. So remember that. But also remember, it's not just about collaboration externally, it's about internal collaboration as well. Going back to that Formula 1 pit stop, you know, the Red Bull team collectively striving to achieve that same goal, understanding the importance of their role, etc. Well, again, and their timings and their collaboration, you know, again, some stats here, over 50% of respondents in a recent survey said that, you know, there are 6 cross-functional approvals required before taking on a new supplier. In fact, 27% of companies said that's actually 10 approvals required before taking on a new supplier. So that collaboration, that ability to be able to work collectively, super important. And this is where SRM can help you, because within the action flows, within the sub-criteria, within the rules, you can have an approval process which goes through each of those statements. Included in that approval process can be the steps that you expected them to take. It's also because you can see with every scorecard what status that particular action or task is at. You don't need to be following up with team members, etc., but also you can maybe push them and say, hey, we need to get this done by such a date. The SRM is the ability to really shape that and become that conduit between internal and external suppliers. And the final thing in terms of collaboration, I just wanted to kind of highlight the difference between what a transactional relationship looks like and what a transformational relationship looks like. Because all the evidence that we have, and you can imagine, not only have we got hundreds of clients and thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of suppliers within our solution, wherever you have the greatest level of engagement with your supplier, the performance levels already also follow. With that said, we cannot have a one-to-one conversation, interaction with every single one of our suppliers. It's almost impossible for most people. So the first thing is to identify your best performing suppliers that fit your strategic goals, because they're the ones, we're talking about now that top 5, 10, 15, maybe 20% of your suppliers. They're the ones that you want to stick to like glue. They're the ones that you want to make sure that you're managing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. But also, like I said before, you want to have that mindset that you actually want to become their customer of choice and forge that strategic partnership. And, you know, a very basic example of that, if you've got a supplier that's providing widgets, maybe due to shortages, they've got 300 widgets left. Rather than going to somebody else, they ring you first to go, hey, we've got just 300 widgets left. I know you typically order 150 a month. Do you want me to put your name down for those? Absolutely. And thank you for that. But also, it's those types of conversations that will drive to the innovation. It means you're working together to win together. Because again, when you're collaborating and you're working in partnership with your suppliers, there should be winners at both sides of the table. Gone the days of just crushing your suppliers on price. In fact, I had this conversation only a few weeks ago where, because the cost of materials and time and obviously wages has gone up so significantly over the last 2 to 3 years, they're actually more focused on efficiency now. So they're working with their suppliers to drive efficiencies rather than trying to, again, I'm trying to use a word that's not offensive, but really cram the suppliers down on price to make it difficult for them to trade and be profitable. They're more focused on efficiencies with their suppliers, which I think is super cool in terms of a way of moving forward. So there we have it. We've covered off operational, we've covered off tactical, and we've covered off strategic. I appreciate we've done all three of those in, you know, very, very quickly at a very high level. But what I also wanted to showcase today is really the impact of that. So at the very top of the pyramid, we have impact. And when we talk about impact, we talk about this triple line perspective of impact: people, planet, and profit. But remember, this is only possible when you're in partnership with your suppliers and working collectively with your suppliers. So let's look at these individually. So people, you know, we know, and the statistics tell us, that for every 100,000 suppliers that are successfully managed in a dedicated SRM platform, it's not just those 100,000 suppliers you're impacting, it's the sub-suppliers. So that could be up to 10 million sub-suppliers that are now applying more sustainable business practices. So if we look at the people, the employees that are hired by those organizations, that means, based on averages, that's 500 million employees that are working at healthier, safer, more sound workplaces. And if you think of the lives that that's impacting, think of the families and the friends and the communities that they're part of. That's up to 2 billion people's lives we've now impacted and improved. So think about all the people that are on this call today. Think about the collective, I mean, the hundreds of thousands of suppliers that we have within our armory. For every 100,000 suppliers that are properly managed, and this is our responsibility as procurement leaders, okay, that are properly managed in an SRM solution, we have the opportunity to impact up to 2 billion lives. So if anyone ever asks me what's the impact of an SRM, well, say no more. But then we look at planet. You know, going back to Formula One, this is a race against time, okay, climate change. And as procurement, we're on the front line of this. Our responsibility is to drive and to get our suppliers to think differently about climate. And we're not looking for significant changes. We're looking for 1, 2, maybe 3% changes. Imagine if every one of our supplier made a difference that made 1 or 2% difference, the impact of that. And if we look at Formula One, an industry known as gas guzzling, very wasteful. They've made a pledge to say that Formula One will reach net zero emissions by 2030. Now, I'm sorry, if Formula One can make that type of pledge, think about what other organizations, suppliers, the type of pledges they can create. And finally, profits. Now, I'm not going to throw at you here bogus numbers. You decide what profits are going to impact your business, what the ROI is. But if we just break these down, each of these levels, if you've now got all your supplier information in one place, think of the efficiencies. No longer having that scattered data where you're having to go through various tools, everything in one place. If we've now automated and streamlined how you onboard, manage, validate your suppliers, think about, again, the efficiency value that's driving into the business. Because we've turned that information into knowledge, into understanding, think about what we now know and understand, truly know and understand about suppliers. Going back to Marlene's quote, we've turned that information into knowledge. We now have a fully robust risk, compliance, and qualification process being fully managed within that SRM solution. And we're in that strategic place where we're driving performance. We're now measuring each of the key components of that relationship with that supplier. And we're identifying strengths and weaknesses. We're playing suppliers off each other. We're saying, hey, you're one of 6 suppliers that can provide this product. Are you aware that 5 of them are delivering at this? Maybe you should improve that process. Again, super important. And we're collaborating better. We're having more engaging, data-driven conversations, which is building strategic partnerships. Collectively, and again, I don't throw numbers at you, think of the profit, the impact that's going to have on the waste within your organization. Never mind if it just identifies one risk that could be catastrophic to your business. That's the power of SRM. So there we have it. We're going to move into the Q&A, and I can see we've got lots of questions already. So I'm going to go into those in a moment. But just to round this off, SRM is the engine to supercharge performance and orchestrate sustainable value. So maybe, and I think it was 73% of you, maybe tomorrow morning when you're sat in front of your 3rd Excel spreadsheet, frustrated that the data's wrong, or you're waiting on information to come back from various departments, or you're chasing people, maybe, just maybe, there's an alternative. And maybe SRM is something that you should look to consider. Okay, I hope that's been useful. And just one final question, and I'm going to entice you to use the chat box for this. We want to keep making these sessions super valuable for those that want to attend. And we can only do that if you let us know what you'd like us to discuss. So please use the chat box on the right-hand side. I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds for this while I start to filter through the questions that have come through during today's session. But what would you like to talk about? What would you like to learn more about? Whether it's SRM functionality, whether it's data management, compliance, regulation, supply performance, collaboration tools, or anything else which is relative to performance and SRM, please let us know, because we can, of course, build that into our next session. Okay, like I said, I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds just to add that information into the chat box so I can, while I start to filter through some of these questions that have come through here. And thank you, Richard, for all your help in doing so. Okay, I've got the questions here. So I'm going to start going through these. Like I say, there's a lot of questions here, and I don't think we've got a huge amount of time, but we'll get through as many of these as we can. I'll also urge you, for anybody that's interested, of course, in understanding a little bit more about Kodiak Hub, if you've got any questions, any feedback you'd like to give, or simply want to see how our solution could work within your organization, then use the link in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen where you can book a one-on-one conversation either with me or any of my team. So feel free to do that. Okay, so like I say, these questions have come through anonymously, so I'm going to dive into those now. I'm just going to read these live. So I've got one here. Our experience is that CRM systems are great, but it's a hurdle that really takes a lot of time and resources to get the quality right with detailed information when implementing the system. Any thoughts, comments on that, please? Well, of course, CRM and SRM are two very different things. With SRM, the first thing that I think is super important to know and understand is that we are well, we do this a lot. We onboard a lot of new clients, so you'll also benefit from a process that is proven and that works. In addition to that, we have an extensive library now which reaches over 6,000 proven best practices. So where there are gaps in your existing methodology or requirements, then most of the time we will have a template or a solution or a structure and a framework, something that we can share with you. So again, we're much more than just a technology. This is about structure, framework, systems, processes. In fact, one of our goals is to make sure that we share best practices amongst our community. So if we see a client do something really great, then we do whatever we can in sessions like this and in future sessions to actually provide additional insights. So to answer your question, yes, it can be complex, it can take time, but actually our goal is for you to have, for a new client joining our platform, you get return on investment and value from within 2 weeks. The onboarding, start to completion, depending on the scope, because it's depending on the size of the opportunity, could be anything from 6 weeks to 18 weeks. But it's super fast. This is not an ERP solution, which is an 18-month, 2-year project. This is out the box, plug and play. I'm going to move into, hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to move into the next question. When you say all collaboration activities are automatically plugged into the platform, does it mean employees have to enter their activities in the platform, or does it truly mean using AI to automatically pull emails, team messages, etc., related to supplier in one place? A bit of both. Okay, so you obviously have the ability to start new conversations within the platform, but equally, the idea is that it will create a portal. So say, for example, internally, there are 8 people involved in a conversation. Every time that action or that conversation grows, it'll be prompt. So everybody will get an email. And obviously from that email, they can dive into that conversation, add their comments, their notes. So we use email. So again, for most people, it will just look and feel just like email. But the difference is it's all being tracked and traced within the supplier scorecard, which also means, by the way, from a traceability perspective, also from an audit perspective, you've got everything in one place. Because you might have, it might be a project conversation which involves 100 suppliers. Well, automatically that conversation will be visible in every one of those suppliers, but also you can holistically dive in and see what conversations are ongoing across the entire organization. Okay, I think I've got more questions coming in. Okay, I've got the next one here. Our experience is that CRM systems are great, but it's a hurdle that really takes a lot of time, resources to get the quality right, with detailed information when implementing the system. Any thoughts, comments on that, please? Again, goes back to my previous response. Yeah, absolutely. It can take a long time, but equally it's very quick as well based on our processes we have. Is it possible to test the system before? How long does it take to implement it for a medium big company? And what is the cost both for implementation and monthly for the usage? Okay, a lot in that question. I suppose just to break this down, is it possible to test before? Yeah, absolutely. We do offer the ability to either have proof of concept trials or to actually run the system. It's as a trial. How long does it take to implement? As per my last question, depends on the scope. For a medium size, I'd estimate, 10 to 12 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, depending on your involvement, because it's two-way. Typically, we ask for one person to give 20% of their time in a working week to help with the onboarding. And what is the cost of implementation? In most cases, and sit down for this, but we try not to charge for implementation. Again, depends on the size and the scope, but we try and keep the cost to a minimum. And the ongoing monthly usage, that again, very much determined by the scope. We're a modular solution, a modular suite. So you can have a full suite, everything from risk data to compliance to performance, or you can use just one element of the platform. Costs can start as little as 25,000 euros a year. It can scale up depending on what your usage is. So hopefully that gives you some indication, but I would recommend, if you're looking at this type of information, I'd love to have a conversation with you, understand what's important, and I can absolutely give you some ideas of what that cost would look like. I've answered that one already. Okay. Does the supplier, another question here, does the supplier need to input data separately for each customer, or can they complete a template once, generate a single document that could be used for multiple customers on the platform? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. Anything that requires duplication should not happen as far as we're concerned. Should only ever ask for information once. So you can have various templates that can go out to 1,000 suppliers if you want it to at one time. And again, you could build rules into that template. Maybe you've got a supplier that's based in a particular country. As a result of that response, it will ask specific questions, or it's part of a particular category. Based on that, it will ask specific questions. Or again, you can build rules. So one template can actually have multiple avenues, because and this is a super important point, survey fatigue with suppliers is a real problem. Not for us, like I said before, 86% of all suppliers that respond to our surveys do so in full within 2 weeks. But the reason for that is that you might have 300 qualifying questions within an onboarding statement. But actually, I might be a supplier where only 25 of those questions are relevant. The way in which our solution works is it will make sure it only pulls out the questions which are relevant, which makes it much quicker, much easier, much more dynamic for me to respond. The other important factor here is that as a supplier, there's nothing I need to log into. There's no platform, there's no passwords. I don't need to create users. Again, we use portals which go out to your suppliers, which are powered links. They click the link, they're straight in. You can share that link with multiple people, so you have multiple departments providing different information. I'm going to take a break there. We've got lots more questions coming in. So what we'll do is I'll make sure that I respond to each of those individually. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join today for this session. We really hope it's been valuable and useful. As I said before, we want to continue to make these sessions super helpful. So if you have any ideas, feedback, comments of how we can improve these sessions, but also any particular topics you would like us to cover, then please do let us know and we'll make sure to schedule those in. But for now, I'd like to wish you all a very good day. And again, thank you for spending 45 minutes with me this afternoon. Bye-bye.